Welcome back to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hutter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the sergeant at arms.
And joining us today is Mike Simonelli. Mike's a retired police officer with the Suffolk County Police Department, former PBA board member, an author, community activist. He wears many hats. So thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you, CJ, Tanner. Great to be back.
See you too.
Thanks, man. It's good to see you again. You know, you used to be a staple here in the office. You worked here full time for, what was it, 8
years.
8 years.
2 terms.
Do you want to just bring the mic closer? We want to be able to hear you. Our audience wants to hear you, so.
Yeah, so you worked here full time for 8 years.
Yes.
And then you continued on your career as sergeant at arms. You went back out on the road. So you had a really interesting career.
Yeah, sergeant at arms probably the best job in the PBA.
We had a good run there for a little while, Mike.
Yes, we did. You and I. Handling those meetings, making sure everybody stayed
Nobody got out of order.
Well behaved. It's kind of easy when everybody carries a gun. Everybody behaves.
Generally so, yes.
It's good when we all get along too, right? There's cohesiveness. We all work together well. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's one team, one fight here. There's no real bickering like you hear of other organizations. So it was
rowing in the same direction.
Exactly.
Yep.
For the members.
Absolutely.
So we're excited to have you back. You know, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history, your time in the military, maybe when you joined the police department?
Sure. I joined the military in 1989. I went to the United States Air Force Academy and in Colorado Springs. Did my 5 years active duty in the Air Force, which got some really good assignments, 3 years in Italy, some time in Texas, and then a deployment to Saudi Arabia, which I got to tell you, if you want to deploy in style, you deploy with the Air Force because we were living in a townhouse, laying out. There was a pool. I think I put on like 15 pounds of muscle in 3 months.
Oh, that's great.
You could hit the chow hall twice for each meal, beginning and end. It was a great time.
I feel like I've heard that. The Air Force is like the Suffolk County of the military.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
They actually come and take away your tray when you eat at the chow hall. And you
don't even have to clean up after yourself.
You do not. Yeah.
Oh, it's
That's
great.
great service.
Yeah. So then when I switched to the Army then when I got out. And then I would go to Fort Dix for training. We'd sneak over to the chow hall to eat. Because in our chow hall, you had to take your tray, put it away, Then the food was much better. But yeah, ultimately, I got off active duty, came back to New York, and I started the process for all the alphabet agencies, FBI, DEA, Secret Service. And it was taking so long that I then applied to NYPD. And what's kind of sad is I'm from Brooklyn, so I was back in the 6-1. I go to the precinct asking for the application, and the cops are like, "What are you doing here? Why do you want to join? You shouldn't join us." And they're literally trying to talk me out of being a cop.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it was pretty disheartening. It was sad. I felt bad for them.
Right.
I mean, I was going to do it regardless. And
yeah, those poor guys feel like they're doing a 20-year sentence instead of working a career.
Yes, it's horrible. And I saw you guys touched upon that. We can get into that later with Damon when you were talking about the membership of Suffolk County being a smaller job compared to New York City, but us having more members in the Brotherhood for the Fallen because we're supported by our community.
Right.
Big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was the same thing in the academy. Guys would come over, was like, "Dude, you're an academy grad. You're a military officer. Why are you here?"
That's crazy.
Yeah, but meanwhile, for me, growing up in the city, NYPD was the job. I mean, Suffolk's great. Our contract is amazing. The pay, the support from the community. But how many TV shows are there about us or NYPD? All the shows are on NYPD or LAPD.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of sad. But from the academy, I was in the city academy, and I got the call to come over to Suffolk. So before I even graduated, I came over, and it was like night and day, too, because the city academy, their showers were so disgusting. There was literally inches of just water that you would be walking in. I refused to shower there.
I remember that. It was disgusting.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had bugs flying around.
I went to a new academy, so I didn't experience it. It was brand new when I was in. The showers were brand new. I didn't get that experience.
The academy in 20th Street, you're walking through a puddle to get to and from the shower.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I was in College Point, much better commute too.
Well, I was to say, then I came to this academy, and it was a brand new academy at the college. We were the first class in it. Brand new showers. I was like, "Oh, this is heaven."
Yeah.
So much better.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
Little things go a long way.
They do.
Yep.
So then I came over here. At the same time, I had moved over to the Army National Guard. And then about a year onto the job here, 9/11 happened, changed all our lives. My unit we got assigned down to the ground zero. And so I was there for a little bit. And then a fellow cop who was in civil affairs told me about his unit was going to be invaded. He's like, we're going to invade Iraq, next year. I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I switched over to that unit. Sure enough.
So you were looking for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you want to be in there to make the difference.
I want to follow in the family footsteps. Grandparents were in world wars, and my father volunteered for NAM. So, yeah.
That's not surprising knowing you, Mike, that you would volunteer to do that.
So it was pretty awesome. I mean, not many times there are people you can say, yeah, I got to invade a country. So we did.
And on the heels of 9/11, too, when patriotism was at like an all-time high, at least during my lifetime.
Yes. It was just like with COVID. The police, first responders were heroes.
Right.
You couldn't do enough. Everybody liked to see you, which was nice. That's how our first responders and cops should be recognized and treated.
Right. Should be all the time.
Exactly.
Not just after a disaster.
Right. So yeah, we did that. The job was awesome while I was away. I came back and it was as if I never left. At that time, I was in the 3rd precinct. I think a little bit after that, I switched over to highway because the guidance was, if you go to highway, you're in special patrol, you get to ES. It's like the new path. Ended up not being true. So I went back to the 3rd. But I got to tell you, highway, I give those guys a lot of credit. When you're on the highway and you feel those cars going by you on a stop, your car's shaking. That's one of the most dangerous jobs we have.
I never want to go to the highway. I pulled over a couple cars on the Northern State. It's awful. It's
nerve-wracking right away. It's nerve-wracking. And look at
they fly by you.
Right. Yeah. Look at what just happened with Brendan Gallagher, right? I mean, you're out there on the highway moving at high rates of speed. Mm-hmm. It's a dangerous job out there. Very. And I give Commissioner Catalina a lot of credit. He just moved a lot of manpower to highway.
I saw that.
Yeah. So at least those guys now have more hands on deck to try to help with traffic control when they're on a T-stop. It's always a lot better when there's 2 police cars on a T-stop, especially on a highway.
Right.
So you can make sure that traffic's moving over a lane.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd have times where there's only 3 or 4 guys on the LIE and 3 or 4 on the Sunrise, and you're doing stops and there's no backup.
It's difficult to control traffic too, like on a regular street. Now you're talking about cars going like 60, 70 miles an hour. It's dangerous.
It is very, yeah. Because you'll have those times where you do the rolling stop because there's debris in the road and people don't understand that. And if you're in the far left lane while you're doing it, cars in the right lane will try to sneak past you.
Yep.
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit. Highway.
Then you went back to that 3rd precinct. Did you go to Cope eventually?
I did go to the 3rd, and within a couple of years, I was able to get to Cope. And I was in Cope for a couple of years, and then I deployed to Afghanistan. So that was my second chance to go overseas with the Army. And the food was horrible. But we didn't even have...
Doesn't compare to the Air Force.
It was like the first deployment. We lived with the locals, the Kurds, on a Peshmerga base. And now this time, being civil affairs, you eat with the locals because you're trying to bring the locals. Civil military operations, have them look favorably upon what we're trying to do, integrate, teach them how to run a country.
What was that like? Trying to basically coach a whole nother culture on how to build themselves back up.
How was it? I think you could tell by the withdrawal what happened. Mm-hmm. It completely fell apart because it was smoke and mirrors. There was no changing their culture.
Right.
They didn't want us there. Even the interpreter who was friendly with me, who I had been in side by side during a firefight, he told me, he's like, "Sir, I like you. You're nice, but we don't want you here. We will use you for every dollar we can get from you, but we just want you gone." And you see that it was sad the way they live. You literally had people still in their villages, just dirt, sewage running down the middle of the village, kids playing in it, and in their little huts kind of made of mud. They would have a hole in the floor, and that's where they would have a fire, like a stove, and making naan, the bread. Mm-hmm. Bread was quite delicious. But it was like stepping back in time.
Right.
And there was a shadow government at night. So if you're not out there as a cop patrolling 24/7, you know what a deterrent presence is. If the military is stuck on the base at nighttime because you don't have the manpower to be out patrolling, then the Taliban was able to do their thing at nighttime and kind of negate whatever we did because they could just tell people, when the military's not here at night, we're coming back for you. Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
Yeah, very scary.
And because, like you said, it becomes almost like a stagnation where whatever progress you make during the day, they undo at night, and you're just stuck in the same spot day after day.
Right.
Isn't that crazy that they don't want you there? Because then they're getting taken over basically by the Taliban. You said so. Aren't you guys preventing that from happening? And why wouldn't they want you there if you're the protection?
We were trying, but it's a cultural thing, and I guess we were portrayed or shown as the bad guys, and I mean, this is the way the police are portrayed as the bad guys here.
Right.
So it's very simple, of course, because we're not Afghani, we're Americans. Like, why are you trying to bring over your culture to us?
They looked at us as the outsiders.
Exactly, because we were.
Right.
And then when you see some of the things USAID has been trying to push on other countries around the world, you could understand, like, they don't want it.
Right.
They are very conservative, religious conservative. So yeah, there was conflicts there.
I think like we talk about like a lot of cultural things, and one of the things is like accepting everything. I don't think we have to really. I think everybody's culture is different, and you can have your own culture and have different ideas and views, and you don't have to accept everything. You just let people do their own thing, but you don't have to make it part of your own culture.
Exactly, you're forcing it upon other people, which we see happening in public schools,
right?
By one side, and we can get into that later, the whole public school fight, because we got involved as a union because we saw anti-police stuff was being perpetuated.
Right.
And clearly, a lot of cops, a lot of our members are married to school teachers, so it's not that the teachers necessarily believe in that.
You got very involved in that when you started with the school board, going to the meetings and everything like that. Why don't you talk a little bit about that if we segue to that?
Sure. Well, with the whole thing with George Floyd happened, if you want to talk about somebody not getting due process, we could talk about Derek Chauvin, because you see what's happening with this illegal Kilmar Abrego Garcia. But after Floyd happened, in Smithtown, the school district put out a letter to the families, a call for action, forming or getting the Smithtown equity team really involved and blowing up to actually do some work, talking about, racial injustices and all that. So as a cop and somebody who in the military, I was actually the equal employment opportunity officer for a whole command. So I reported directly to the 1-star. I went to a 1-month school in the military for it, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. So I was read up on equality, and I'm a full believer of treating everybody equal, no racism, any of that. But what I saw really gave me concerns because they were talking about cops and the profession as if it's just a foregone conclusion we're racist. So I joined the team. I said all the right words to get selected. Mm-hmm. And once I was on the team, I saw they had a guy come from, I think it was Tennessee. Funny enough, his name was Michael Brown. Yeah. And ironic, right? Yeah. And it was Zoom because of the whole COVID, but he was giving us lessons on white privilege and white guilt and pro BLM stuff and talking about police incidents and totally factually inaccurate. So I just I was gathering evidence, and after I had been on for a little while, I would start providing facts to refute it, and I was getting attacked from other people on this equity committee, teachers, parents, community
just for
members.
Presenting facts, things that can't even be debated.
Exactly.
And that's like everything that's in your book.
Exactly.
Your book is all factual based.
Yes.
It cannot be debated.
No. It shouldn't be able to be.
Right.
I mean, a fact is a fact, but it's kind of like science, though. That changed as we saw.
Right.
Yeah. So after presenting that and seeing the pushback that I got, I came to the union in one of our board meetings, and I'd let the board know we have a problem. If this is happening in Smithtown schools, which is known to be a very conservative area, then it's got to be happening in other schools. And by the way, this is what's happening. And so I showed you guys, and I spoke at the school board meeting, and I blew it up. I exposed what was going on. And the assistant superintendent for curriculum, ended up resigning, leaving, going to work for some Chinese agency from what I understand. And then, of course, since then, they changed the equity team, so I wasn't back on it the next year.
Of course they would remove you.
Of course. Yeah.
How dare you speak out against them?
I know.
We don't want you here anymore.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear another voice of reason. We don't want to hear some other side of the argument. Yeah. We'd rather just be ignorant to what's really going on and just be able to spew whatever we want to spew without hearing anything contrary to what we already believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Silence the opposition.
I think you if you wanted a team that was actually based on getting the best results, you'd want people that were critical thinkers involved. That's what you were doing.
Right. How about diversity of thought? They talk so much about diversity, but they don't want to hear our side or the other side. Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
It truly is for some people.
Yeah. And it's unbelievable. I couldn't imagine living in such a way.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy being able to have a healthy debate, talk about multiple sides of an argument, right? Whether I have my side, somebody else has their side, and let's talk through it.
Yeah.
And what I've come to notice is in most cases, not all, everybody has the same end result in mind, thinking that they're moving towards a better society. They want to improve society. Right. Most people, not all. And I think there's a lot more in common than we think, but then you have the extremists that some of them are truly evil people.
They are.
That want to just brainwash our children and kind of bring down our society and make us almost I don't know what the word is, maybe subservient to other societies, make us not as strong.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to weaken us. And the easiest way to do that, because when you look at our military, it's not going to be through a military fight. It's from the inside. Mm-hmm. And they've done it with the culture wars. Right. They've made people hate the police. Think of what heroes you guys were with COVID-19, still going out there answering calls, dealing with people that were sick. People were banging their pots and pans every night, I think at 5 o'clock in the city for the nurses. And then George Floyd happened, and that was it. You guys are racist killers.
It's like they poison the public, basically. And you get like one person, and this person goes and talks to another person. You poison that person, and it just grows like a disease, basically.
Right. It's unbelievable how one drop in the bucket just all of a sudden changes everybody's perception on an entire profession. There's 1.5 million law enforcement officers throughout the country. Yeah. And they take cherry-picked situations where one cop maybe did the wrong thing or maybe appeared to do the wrong thing, and they paint us all with a broad brush. Yes. It's unbelievable.
It's a selective outrage, and it's also suppression by the media. When you look at the stories that they make, headlines or that they pursue and do follow-ups on, and the ones that they don't, it's clear. I mean, I have a whole book here describing it from the print media to the cable networks, the stories that they do tell, they don't tell, what they exclude. Mm-hmm. It's right there in black and white. I think most people do see it, but what you see is a lot of people they don't want to get involved because they don't want to be called names. They don't want to be called racist, and they don't want to be doxxed. Right. And that's what happens.
Right. Which event really started you writing that book? Like, what got you motivated to write that book? If there was one, or if it was multiple,
probably Michael Brown.
And so everybody knows. Can you just hold up the book and read out the title so everybody knows what book we're talking about?
Justified Deadly Force and the Myth of Systemic Racism: All the Facts you need to know. So it basically started, I'd say, with the Michael Brown shooting. Mm-hmm. And you want to talk about due process? That's a cop who was excoriated by the media. Yep. His life and career was ruined.
Hands up, don't shoot. Yeah, it never happened.
Exactly. Yep. And they still, years later, the woman who just ran for president, Kamala Harris, Senator Elizabeth Warren, I think Bernie Sanders, years later still do social media posts acknowledging the anniversary of his death, like he was some martyred hero.
It's bizarre.
It really is, because the facts have shown, the Obama Justice Department showed that what the media was pushing, it was a lie. He didn't have his hands up. He wasn't running away. He attacked an officer. I think he fractured his orbital socket. He was trying to get his gun. He was first shot fighting for the gun in the car. And then he ran away and the officer pursued him. And then he stopped and ran at the officer.
Right.
So.
And after all that transpired, like when Michael Brown starts running away, you can't just avoid trying to capture this guy. This guy just tried to kill a cop.
Oh, yeah. You have to go.
You have to take action. Right, exactly. It's not like you could avoid this confrontation.
No, because God forbid he runs away and then he harms somebody else. What'd you do? Is the police
there's a player act.
Yeah, of course.
You have to try to catch the bad guys.
Yeah. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So knowing the facts of that, as I was on the PBA board and doing your job at the time, fast forward, I was working on my master's degree in national security. And as it happened in January through April of 2020, I wrote my master's thesis, and I focused it on media, the press, the politicians, and the protesters, their prejudice during deadly police shootings. So I had shown, which is the first part of this book, how biased they all are. And then a month later, George Floyd happened. So with that happening, I was using all the facts from my book, trying to educate people on social media, speak in front of the legislature as they had the police reform task force that was pushed down by Cuomo, who is disgraced at what he did as a governor, and now he's going to run for mayor and probably get elected.
Isn't it weird how he was like public enemy number one just a handful of years ago?
Yes, he was.
And now he's probably the favorite to be the next
here for
mayor.
a couple of years, then come back and reinvent yourself. I mean,
It's like short-term memories.
It's great to be a Democrat. That's all I'm going to say. So speaking out at the task force.
It's bizarre that they can't get a new candidate, right? Somebody that doesn't have that controversy in their past. It's bizarre.
There's nobody better than that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does he have a war chest or something that?
Well, they're trying to get rid of Adams, and I think that's it's hard to get rid of a sitting
Maybe
mayor.
their strongest hand right now.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
So then what it ended up blossoming into was, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write a book on it and put it out there so our side can at least, in all these times that people are trying to slam us, use an incident as, this proves it. Say, look, everything that you're saying, it's happened to a white person that's been killed by the police in the same situation. Mm-hmm. You're just being taught to hate the police, to think that we're racist. Right? It's the furthest thing from the truth.
Right. And I'm glad you bring that up too, because what I try to say all the time is we don't have an excessive force systemic issue in this country.
No.
We have a compliance with the police systemic issue.
Exactly.
So many people are taught to not comply with our lawful orders now.
Right.
And that's what makes these situations build up and end up culminating in these deadly force situations.
And the media's made it worse too. The media and some politicians that come out, and people listen to the politicians, and they come out and tell them basically not to follow directions of the police.
Exactly.
And that's the worst idea.
I couldn't imagine ever being told to not follow a lawful order from a police officer when I was growing up.
No.
It's bizarre. When we were growing up, it's like cops, nurses, teachers, doctors.
Right.
Those were the heroes of our community.
Right.
And all of a sudden, things just changed. It seemed like overnight.
Yeah. Well, it's because they blow things out of proportion and they push lies. Like if you want to talk about accidental deaths in hospitals, medical accidents, I think it's around 300,000 people die each year in medical accidents. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we're big supporters of the medical industry.
Right, of course.
Absolutely.
The nurses, they put our guys together. Dr. Voss.
Dr. Voswinkle's saved more lives in Suffolk County than bulletproof vests.
Exactly. But when you look at the people that they're dealing with in the hospitals, people that are very sick or ill on their deathbed, and so that there's a greater probability that is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Just like if we're dealing with people that are resisting arrest and trying to fight us, they're whacked out of their mind on drugs or mental illness, then the odds are increasing that, it could be a deadly force encounter. We don't ever go into the day or that event wanting that. It's the last thing a cop wants on, on their conscience. But we have a right to go home to our families too.
100%. 100%. And I'm glad you brought up, people whacked out of their minds on drugs or whatever, because I feel like there's been an uptick in narcotics use too.
Right.
And a lot of that goes along with the same timing of these compliance issues we've been dealing with. Because people are getting whacked out of their minds. Yeah. And people are resisting arrest where maybe when they weren't whacked out of their minds, when they were thinking clearly, maybe they would have complied and maybe there would have been less of an issue. But there's been so much push for the legalization of marijuana or the decriminalization of, they have all these gummies out now, right? The cookies, the brownies, whatever. You can buy these things. Yeah. And I believe that there is a direct correlation.
Yeah, because you don't know what those things are laced with. Yeah. And you look at, I think the greatest killer of healthy people in our country, as young people, is fentanyl. 100,000 deaths a year. There's where's the outrage on that?
And when we were younger, it used to be taught that, marijuana, weed was a gateway drug. It'll lead you to these other things.
Yes.
And again, I think there's a direct correlation with the uptick in the heroin use.
Right. No, agreed. Yeah. And I once arrested a guy who was high on PCP. I probably had 50 to 70 pounds on him. I got him from behind. I took him down. He stood right back up with me on his back.
They have like Superman strength.
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. It's like Superman strength. It's like they feel no pain. They can just move and wiggle around without any feel or resistance against them.
Right.
And like I've arrested guys that were on PCP, and we literally had to have a cop on each limb because you could not control this guy. Otherwise,
the public doesn't realize that either. They see 4 cops on top of this guy. Yeah, it took 4 cops because he got up with 3 cops on his back.
Right. And we're trying to take him into custody without injuring him.
Exactly.
So sometimes it does take more of us to avoid injury.
Yes. It's very easy to fight somebody off. A lot easier to fight somebody off than it is to gain control of a person.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. 100%. I mean, there's even been times where you're trying to handcuff a 100-pound woman after a DWI or something. Mm-hmm. And if they get whacked out of their mind and don't want to get arrested, they can squirm right out of those. It's hard to handcuff somebody if they don't want to be.
Yeah. Something else that, along with the increase in use of drugs, what I've seen, because I was fortunate enough to be back out on the street just within the past year on the warrants team, there's a lot more resistance to just following basic orders on a traffic stop. People refusing to put their window down or refusing to present ID. I mean, I had more people refusing in the span of, say, 6 months than I had in 10 years on the street.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot more the public believes that they can dictate the situation.
Exactly.
Right.
I think when you come in contact with the police, you should follow directions, and that usually leads to a better outcome.
Right.
But you can't have the public dictating situations and how they go. You just can't have that.
No, but they've been empowered by the media, by the activists, by the politicians telling them that you don't have to follow what the police says.
But it's like your kid telling you what he's going to do. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
Right. And I give Nassau County a lot of credit. They just passed a law in their legislature this week that now when police are involved in some sort of situation, if you're told to step back, if you're told to give them space, you have to give at least a 15-foot buffer now. Right. Otherwise, you're failing to obey lawful order and you can be arrested for it.
Well, yeah, a cop can't have eyes in the back of his head. So if we're dealing with somebody, we can't have to worry about somebody coming up behind us.
Right. So these people that try to record everything, get right up in our face and interfere with what we're doing under the guise of the First Amendment, it's really just a scam.
It is.
Well, distance gives you time and gives you the ability to make decisions. You have a little more time to make the decision, make a better decision. So I think that's a very smart law. It creates a lot more safety for the officers and for the people too.
Right.
Yeah, and if somebody feels the need to record what's going on, even though we have body cameras now anyway, if they feel a need, all right, go ahead, record, but be 15 feet away. Yeah. Let me feel a little safer because I don't have eyes in the back of my head, like you put it. Right. And let us just do our job. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah. And I think as we've seen with the implementation of body cameras, as much as you don't like it, and I personally didn't like it because you can't talk freely, and I don't mean talking about badly about anybody. You just don't say anything because, if you curse, now like, oh my God, I cursed on this.
Filtered a little more.
Right. But it showed in encounters that were deadly or force was used that we're right. It's the other person had made us fear for our lives or did something towards somebody else. So it's exonerating a lot more cops than would have been maybe a questionable because, if I don't see it, I don't believe it. Well, now you can see it.
Right.
I think it gives a little more transparency to the public as well, and to these people the community activists, when they can see actually how the public's behaving in police presence. Yeah. When somebody makes a complaint, it used to be we didn't have the full evidence, so you never knew what exactly happened, even though there was an investigation. Yeah. Now, when you see how a situation unfolds and how this person was behaving, you can kind of be like, all right, well, yeah, that went the way I thought it would go.
Right. And like most cops, when we first found out we were going to be having body cameras come to Suffolk County, I was a little apprehensive to that, because you feel like Big Brother's watching. What if something gets taken out of context? But the opposite is what happened. Everything was in context and it's clearing us. Right. And like you said, a lot of the complaints that would have otherwise happened are actually just getting cleared by the body camera footage now because we have the full footage. It's unedited instead of somebody else coming in with a cell phone camera video where it's, 10 seconds from this point, 15 seconds from that point, and they just cherry pick little points that make things appear to be something that they weren't. Right. And I don't know if I'm just thinking optimistically or if this is a realistic possibility at all, but I could foresee a future where the same people that fought for the body cameras go to a point where they say, you know what, these things aren't necessary because it's a waste of money to equip them. It's a waste of money to store all the data because the data is going to get very expensive eventually the longer we go with this. So I can foresee a point where maybe these things do go away.
I can't see them arguing in that for the money part because, as we see with Doge efforts, I don't think they really care about fraud, waste, and abuse.
True.
But they don't want us showing the truth that the people that were saying acted like animals and attacked us are actually acting like animals and attacked us.
Right.
So yeah, they don't want that.
Right. Yeah. I think it's been a huge advantage to the cops. And a lot of cops don't realize how much the footage has benefited them because they don't even hear about these complaints anymore. Right. Because sometimes once the complainer finds out that the whole thing's on body camera anyway, they drop the complaint.
Right. I would just like to see it be taken to the next level where these people that come in, file these complaints against us, making allegations, have them put it on paper.
Right.
Then show what the actual truth is with the footage and charge them with filing a false police report. Yeah. Because as we've seen with this lawsuit by Newsday, any complaint against a cop is going to now be on their records and it's going to be used against them.
I think the reasoning behind that is flawed too. I think that they've used the reason that people would be afraid to go make complaints against cops. I think when you find that they're obviously lying, I think that there are people that actually have a legitimate excuse and a legitimate complaint to be made about certain situations. Right. But I think having that freedom to have no consequence for filing a false report just because it's a cop makes no sense.
Exactly.
Right. And I think a good point of that too is if a complaint comes in as a third party, mom is upset that her son was arrested and the cops beat him up and she thinks they used excessive force, but she wasn't there to see it. She's not knowingly filing a false report. Exactly. She's being mom. But if the perp involved knowingly files a false report of excessive force when in reality he was the one who started the fight, threw the first punch, resisted arrest.
100%.
That should be another crime in itself.
Exactly.
Yep.
Just give us the same respect that the public gets.
Right.
And the same thing with you got the Clean Slate Act. So their felonies or misdemeanors could be erased after a certain amount of years, even though they were convicted. But here's things that we did that were disproven, shown to be that we didn't. But those aren't taken out of our records.
Thank you. Yeah. It's incredible that you can make something completely up and make a complaint against me, and then the next person that foils me sees that complaint, and it becomes this, with this smoke, this fire, allegation, theory. But it's something that's completely unfounded. Exactly. Or it was investigated and I was completely exonerated because the complaint was made up.
Right.
This should not be something that people could read about and try to paint me as somebody who did 10 things wrong when they've all been unfounded or exonerated.
Because that's what the attorneys will use in any case where you have a use of force, anything that goes to trial.
It becomes a huge court issue.
Right.
That they try to attack your integrity when you've never done anything wrong. You've had people with questionable integrity make false allegations.
Right.
We've really gotten into protecting the criminal and not the victim. I think we've gotten away from that for a while. Hopefully we'll go back in the other direction towards helping the victim. And I think that's one of those things where it just weakens the case. Even the unfounded complaints, they weaken the case when they get to the trial. So
Right. And it goes back to, again, before I became a cop, they created the domestic incident report, right? It was another way to protect victims. There wasn't always such a thing as a domestic incident report. Right. A lot of these things would go on any other normal report paperwork, but now there's a specific report for domestic incidents. You're required to fill it out under certain circumstances. And part of that design was to protect victims of domestic violence that didn't always want to cooperate with the police, because we were mandated reporters when certain acts of violence were thought to have happened or possibly occurred.
Right.
And we got away from those ideas of protecting the victims.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because their advocates are louder than ours.
Right. Squeaky wheel gets the oil.
It's very true. 100%.
I think a lot of like your book and everything, a lot of stuff that we've talked about, I think the media has really played a lot into that. And there's a reason why we have a judicial system. And now the judicial system seems to be playing out a lot more through the media.
Yes. It's been the justice system has been weaponized.
Right.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, and we don't want to see that happen to anybody. We just want blind, fair and equal justice.
Right. And to Tanner's point, and you touched on it earlier, some of these cops that are involved in these situations, they get no true due process because the media and the community that sees whatever channel the media is reporting,
right,
they make up their own ruling before anything ever goes to court. All the evidence comes forward.
Right.
And you never get a fair shake.
No.
When you look at the media really controls it because they're the ones dictating to the public, the constituents, and then you have the politicians that now they're pressured to go in a certain direction.
Right.
I mean,
exactly. Right.
They can control how people vote as well.
Well, and look at the police officer that was involved in that Michael Brown case, Officer Wilson. Yeah. He was not guilty of the crimes he was charged of. Mm-hmm. And he was put into a situation where he couldn't even continue being a police officer in Missouri, couldn't even live there with his family because so much of the community had the wrong pieces and not the whole story. Right. And they thought he was some bad guy that was free. Yeah. He had to relocate his family to another state.
Right.
For something he didn't even do wrong.
But that end of story, they don't care.
Right. Where's the due process for that guy? He's a real victim of society right now.
And cop after cop, like Rayshard Brooks, the shooting in Atlanta at the Wendy's.
Yes.
Where he fought the cops, assaulted them, took the taser, shot it at them, and was running away, shooting the taser. Those cops got, I think right away, fired. One was fired and one was administratively suspended.
Right.
And it comes out that I think the DA also went after them immediately saying taser's not a use of deadly force, doesn't raise to that level. Meanwhile, just a few weeks earlier, he had gone after, was prosecuting cops for using the taser on a car full of young black adults because it was almost deadly force.
Right. He takes the opportunity to grandstand, right? Because he's the district attorneys are elected people, and that district attorney in particular took the opportunity to grandstand to potential voters.
It did. It was used in his re-election campaign.
Yep.
But you wouldn't know it. But just last week, a very similar incident like that happened in California, where actually a famous person, I think one of the Real Housewives of Orange County, her brother was killed during a traffic stop with the police. He took off on them on a motorcycle. They caught up to him. He fought with a cop, assaulted him, took the taser, was trying to discharge it at the officer. At that point, the officer shot him, justified deadly force. Yeah. It's been a week. Have you heard any outrage?
No.
Any politicians give statements?
No. This is breaking news to me. I haven't heard anything about this since a week. Of course.
Neither have most people.
Yeah.
You really have to dig for this kind of stuff.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way. It should be everybody's life is equal, right? It's not to the media.
Yeah, it doesn't fit the narrative that they were trying to push for so long.
And they still are.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story, though. One that most people probably don't know about. And this could be just my personal opinion. But the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. Yeah. And you know how that played out.
Yeah.
And that's what they do to try to protest against America, against the police. Well, he went to I believe it was a Green Beret and asked him, because initially what he was doing, I forget what it was disrespectful to the flag. And the Green Beret said, you really shouldn't do that. So he's like, all right, what can I do to show I'm not happy, but I don't want to disrespect the flag so much? It's like, take a knee. And so that's what he's been doing. That's the movement that took off. You see Megan Rapinoe, all the lefties that do that.
Right.
Well, Green Berets are trained in subversion. In the military, the worst thing you could do is take a knee.
Right.
Because when somebody is that weak while you're in boot camp, while you're in advanced training, and you can't keep up, the instructors will just look at you in disgust and say, take a freaking knee. Just take a knee. Because you're so mentally and physically weak, you can't keep up. So that's what all these idiots have been doing, taking a knee. I think this guy did it as a,
Yeah. So, fooled you.
Exactly. It just shows you what kind of virtue signaling you have on the left.
Right.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I never even thought about it like that.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah. And that's a very valid point.
Yeah. They don't even know what it is, the truth of what they say they're fighting for.
Right.
Because if anybody fights for equality and for people's lives, nobody does it more than our police here and the military overseas.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So now, one fun fact about you, because we've talked about some of your military service too, is when you were stationed in Italy, you actually learned how to speak Italian.
I did. Yeah. That's really the best way to learn a language is immersed in the country. I was playing minor league baseball over there. and just going to the local gyms, and just I lived off base, so everything was off base. And within about 8-9 months, I was fluent.
What part of Italy were you in?
In the north, pretty close to Venice.
Okay.
At the base of the Dolomites. It was beautiful.
That's pretty cool that you were playing minor league baseball over there too at the same time. I never heard that part of the story.
Yeah, I skipped. I was in high school. I was on a travel team. We played Little League World Series. One of my teammates ended up being a shortstop for, I think, the Giants, Richie Aurelia.
Oh,
really?
I know who Richie Aurelia is. I didn't know that's your teammate.
I played with him for many years. The guy was phenomenal. We knew back then he was going pro.
That guy's like a legend. He was on was in those World Series teams with Barry Bonds.
Yeah. Richie was really good.
Yeah.
I wasn't that level, but so I didn't play at the Air Force Academy. I didn't want anything to do with the sports there. But then I went to Italy. I was kind of bored. I was like, what can I do? I looked at semi-pro football. I went to one of their practices. Like, Then I went to baseball, and it was a blast. The only rule was, as an American, I think I was the only American at the league at the time. He couldn't be the pitcher or the catcher. So
why is that?
I think it's one of the pivotal positions. I don't know.
Communication, you think?
Was the
part? Do they speak English or?
No, it was all Italian.
Okay, so everybody spoke Italian. They didn't speak any. Okay,
that's interesting because even like pitch signs, you hold down a 1.
It's just fingers, right?
That's strange. So I find that interesting.
Yeah.
What position did you play?
So I ended up playing third. I've been playing third or a catcher at the time. So I played third. What was awesome about playing in Italy, you'd have a doubleheader in between games on the sidelines. They'd be making pasta and sauce.
Oh, it's great.
I swear. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool to see how different cultures have, their own little, their own little ideas of what to do throughout athletic events, right?
Yeah.
So I played in Dominican Republic in high school, and you'd have a full band on top of the dugout playing drums, percussion instruments in between innings, after pitches. Like they make it very exciting.
Yes.
The fans get into it. It gets loud. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, baseball can be boring to watch, so having a band there could liven it up.
Oh, it's awesome. It definitely livens up the crowd. It gets you amped up as a player too. Right. When all of a sudden this music comes on and you're stepping up to bat. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
I love watching international competition, so you can see all those little differences and caveats that different countries have during their competition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great experiences, man.
Yeah. So now your time as a PBA board member, you started off as treasurer, you eventually became sergeant at arms, but then you gave it up. You went back out onto the road. What brought you to that decision? Why'd you want to get back out there on the road?
To be honest, I never really wanted to be inside the office.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a confluence of events that brought me to do it. Stuff that we saw that was going on with the money, and my son. Mm-hmm. At the time, I think he was 5 or something. I was fighting for custody, and I needed a steady Monday to Friday type job where I'd have good hours so I could take care of my boy. And being in the office for those 8 years helped me do that because I got custody and I raised them. So between the military and the police, it was a tough juggling act, but being in the office absolutely made the difference.
Right, made it possible.
And your son's in the military now himself.
Now he's a Marine. Yeah. I tried to talk him out of it, in all honesty. That was back during Biden-Harris. Okay. He was at University of Alabama, and I was stoked. I was like, I went to visit him. It's a great school. Everybody loves America there.
Right.
Very patriotic. I was about to buy a condo, and then he comes home Christmas break. He's like, he was like in tears. Like, Dad, I don't want to go back. It's too much drugs and drinking. I don't like who I'm becoming. Like, wow, okay. So
honestly, that's a mature adult decision too, if that's part of why he wanted to change.
That was it, yeah. It was very mature. I couldn't be mad. I was like, I give you credit for telling me that and for feeling that way. I wish it was different. I wish you could just say no to that stuff and not feel pressured. But he said it was an intense amount of pressure. And he's like, I just want to join the military. So I tried for a while to get him to get into electrical school, but there was just no spots. And then after a few months, he's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm joining the Marines.
Okay.
All right.
Following in Dad and Grandpa's footsteps.
Well, I had told him we were going to go to the Army recruiter afterwards because he wanted to do a Ranger contract. And as we go to the car, he's like, Dad, I don't want to be Army. I really just want to be a Marine. I'm like, all right.
Just do his own thing, yeah.
I said, do better than your dad. I was Army, go be a Marine. Right. I had nothing but respect for the Marines. I saw them firsthand in Iraq, what they do. So That's great. And I couldn't be prouder. He's gone through the boot camp, which, I mean, like, everybody does boot camp, but Marine Infantry School, it's the amount of training, the lack of sleep, the physical health, the nature. What's funny about the Marines, and it's still to this day going on, because he's telling me if they have an issue with one of their classmates, they say, let's take it to the tree line. And they take off their jacket and they duke it out like men.
Get out of here.
I swear to God.
Let's take it to the tree line.
Take it to the tree line. He even had it happen at his next training school. Him and his buddies looking for a friend. They knock on this guy's door. Ends up being somebody else in a different training class. Outranks him by 1 or 2 ranks. And the guy was a real jerk to him. So my son said, you don't get to talk to me like that. Let's go. And the guy was like, yeah. And they both did. And they worked it out. My son's jaw hurt for a while, but he said ultimately he knocked that guy down, and that was it. Now they see each other and there's respect.
Right. Sometimes it takes that to have a mutual respect.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember as a kid growing up, every once in a while you would see 2 guys that would get into a fight in 8th grade, but then in 9th grade, they're best friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes you need that, you got to just get it out of you. You have your moment of, aggression release, and all of a sudden you realize you had a lot in common and you become friends.
Yeah.
You think a little clearer.
Yeah.
And some people are being a jerk and they get called out on it, and then they stop being a jerk.
It's humbling.
And you know what? More people today need to experience that. I think a part of what we have as far as a society problem is these keyboard warriors, these telephone tough guys.
Horrible.
Right? They think they could just say whatever they want and there's going to be no repercussions. Where back in the 90s growing up, if you said something inappropriate, like you might get punched in the mouth.
You get a beating.
Yeah.
I got countless beatings growing up in Brooklyn.
It's bound to happen.
It was just the way of life.
Right. Yeah. Growing up in the 90s, everybody got into a handful of fights. It's part of growing up.
Right.
And it's part of how you become the man you become and learn how to respect other people, boundaries. Right. These people today that have never been in a fight, they don't respect boundaries anymore. No. And there's also the difference back then, typically, unless it was like a rival gang thing, it wouldn't be weapons. It would just be hands. Yes. Unlike what we just saw happen in Texas with that kid at the track event. Yeah. Instead of, all right, I know the kid was bigger and he probably would have taken a shot in the face if it had come to that. But to stab somebody outright? It's incredible. Yeah. It's incredible. That's a great point. Growing up, I never saw somebody carrying around a knife or a gun, right? Never saw it. But if you got into a fight, it was hands. You were wrestling around on the ground. I carried a knife in Brooklyn all the time, but I never had to use it. Right. Which, thank God. Yeah, growing up in Suffolk County, I never saw people walking around with a knife. Right. Like, it just didn't happen. If you had an issue with somebody, you duked it out. But now I think you see pulling people over. Everybody has a knife in their pocket. Yeah, it's very common now. Yeah. It is. I think that's interesting too with like the new cops coming in. Like how many of them have been in fights prior to being on this job? I think having that experience also helps you when you have to fight somebody or you have to roll around with them on the floor. Right. It's not your first time being involved in a situation like this, and you don't hesitate when you should act. It's I remember getting like boxing in the academy in the city, and it all prepared you to get there. But prior to that, like getting into fights with my brother, or getting into fights with other kids during sports games and stuff like that. Yeah. Right. Sports is great for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So, but I feel like we've gone over your whole career, Mike, and I think your career in itself is very impressive. It also makes a great resume for a politician. Why don't you tell it? I know you got something going on right now in the works with the schools. Why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on? You're running for school board, correct? I am currently running for Smithtown School Board, yes. When I retired in January, I had absolutely zero ambitions of running for the school board. It was not on my radar. And then about a month later, I saw in the newspaper that the Long Island LGBT network was literally targeting, I think it was 13 or 15 districts on Long Island, that they were going to run their members to push their agenda in these districts. Now, look, I was a member of our fraternal brotherhood, LGB, in Suffolk. My family's best friends over in Florida always happen to end up being gay guys. That's not an issue. What I have an issue with is when you're pushing, especially the trans agenda on children in schools. Right now, I think it was 40% of children in Long Island schools, so it's not even talking about some other state, in Long Island are reading below basic level. That's 40%. That's scary. Yeah, it is scary. So until you can get every child at least being proficient, why don't you just focus on academics? Right. So to see this activist group bringing their agenda to the schools
Because we saw in Smithtown, I think 2 years ago, they literally had a pledge. They wanted kids to take a pledge, an oath, like an oath of allegiance to their whole agenda, which included putting boys or, letting boys go into whatever bathroom they wanted to. That's a safety issue.
That's crazy. What grade level were they doing that at?
But that was just in schools in general.
Schools in general.
I think the pledge was in high schools, from what I remember. But you have these GSA clubs in as low as middle school. I think some elementary schools have tried to do it. I mean, there's a lawsuit going on right now, I think in Maryland. Pre-K, they're trying to put these books in front of, they actually put the kids' books in front of them, pre-K kids, teaching them about transing themselves.
Which,
look,
you're putting that thought into their head.
Exactly. They're kids. They shouldn't know anything about this. Not straight, not gay, not anything. Just, phonics and social studies and science.
There shouldn't even be a conversation with them.
Exactly.
You're talking to people that, they still believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Right.
So they don't have the full concept of reality yet.
Right.
You need to let the mind develop and mature before anything like this is introduced to somebody.
Like, could you imagine if they were pushing Christianity on these kids at that age? There'd be an uproar.
100%.
But look, when you're an adult, you're 18, God bless you.
Right. You got a little bit of life experience.
Make your own decisions.
Right. You have a little bit more of a grasp on reality and life around you.
Yeah.
At pre-K or elementary school, you don't yet.
So I saw that, and I wrote an article, and then I made a couple of calls to see who wanted to run, and I got somebody who had been on the board before, and then we got another guy, and then we got a ticket.
Nice. So who are the two people you're running with?
I got Karen Wintropski, who one of the first members the PBA ever endorsed in the school boards.
Yes, I do remember that.
Stacy and John, and they had won. And Al Carfora, he's a Knights of Columbus guy, and he's got a daughter in the middle school, so he's concerned about this certain type of agenda is being pushed upon his impressionable daughter.
Right. Parents from within the community. I mean, you raised a man now, but he went through the school district.
Right.
So you're concerned about what's going to happen to your community around you and your family.
Yeah, I don't want any activist group of any persuasion trying to, come into the school and push their agenda.
Right.
So I just want the teachers to be able to teach. Very simple. I'm a public school grad, Sheepshead Bay High School, fully supportive of the public school teachers, the system. It got me into a military academy. Not an easy thing to do. Just let them teach.
Right.
Academics.
You were saying that 40% of Long Island children are not proficient in reading?
Yes.
That's crazy. And I think that when you focus on really the academics and really teach kids how to read and write and do math, I think they become better critical thinkers and make better decisions for themselves.
Exactly.
Instead of getting brainwashed into other things.
Right. I don't want brainwashing from either side. Right now, what I see in the schools is only coming from one side. I'm not pushing for it to be on the other side. I just want kids to be able to focus on academics and athletics, not activism. Pretty simple.
Academics, fact-based learning, not somebody's ideology that's getting in the way.
I think it's admirable too. You're doing this after Mikey he's out of the school district and everything like that. You don't have any skin in the game right now.
Fight. It's going to be nothing but a headache, but I just think it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I think it's great. I think we've had a great conversation. Is there anything else you want to share? Is there anywhere they can find your campaign for the school district to follow it?
We have a Facebook page, which is Ricciardi, Carfora, and Simonelli. If you look on Facebook, just put my name in there. It'll come up. You can also find out information about my book at jdfinformation.com, or just, again, put it in a search engine and you can buy it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Awesome. And we'll make sure the information's out there when we share the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And having been in your guys' shoes, actually both of you, Treasurer and Sergeant at Arms, I thank you on behalf of our members, because I know firsthand what it is you guys do. It's what this union does to protect its members, also protects the people of Suffolk County, because you guys are a political just giant. And you're helping keep Suffolk safe by keeping the crazy left-wing stuff out of here. Because the Democrats that we have in Suffolk, they're very closely aligned, I would say, Republicans and Democrats. There really wasn't much difference between them years ago.
Right.
Now the divide is like here. So you're just keeping rational people in politics here, and you're keeping the craziness out, and it keeps everybody safer.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we have a great relationship with Rich Schaefer, the county Democratic chairman, and he's got a great team under him, and there are working class, common sense Democrats here in Suffolk County.
Right. Big difference from the Democratic Socialists in the city.
Right. Well, yeah. The extreme side of the party is what the issue is.
Right.
The local Suffolk County Dems, they've been very good.
And you guys are doing a great job keeping it like that.
We
Thank you,
appreciate it, Mike.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for your mentorship. So
My pleasure.
thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate having you on, Mike.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, guys.
All right.
Great to see you again.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tanner.
Thanks, Mike.